Hello, welcome back. My name is Bram Lagrou, founder and managing director of Lagrou Partners. This video is all about the 5 misconceptions that people sometimes engage in around communication. And obviously, as we become more aware of these misconceptions, we can choose different decisions that allow us to become more effective as communicators. So, number 1. Treat people the way that you personally want to be treated. It's something that we all got taught as kids and that we have heard time and time again during our adulthood. The point is that, scientifically speaking, it doesn't have enough ground in reality. So in order to solicit the most of your communication effectiveness, I suggest you to have a look at this. If you just look at a model that has been, let's say, proven and well-researched and documented throughout the world, not just in Australia, not just in New Zealand or the Asian Pacific as a whole. We're talking about globally speaking. A very well documented and researched model is called DISC. Now with DISC alone, we can effectively pinpoint that the general population that you and I get exposed to, let's say that there's 4 different types of communication styles. And when you can start reading the people's style, well, you can become more effective as a communicator. Let me show you what I mean by that. In those 4 styles, D, I, S, and C, without going into detail in terms of what each style represents, but the general population can be fit into or can be assigned to any of those 4 styles, predominantly speaking. Doesn't mean that everybody has on one style only, no, but the majority of the people have either 1 or 2 styles that they are natural at, meaning they will display that style easily. Now, here's what's interesting. Throughout the world, in every single country, it's almost similar to the equation where, males opposed to females, they are naturally in balance, unless obviously there are certain circumstances created by man that have led to a difference. But in most countries, the difference is quite equal. There's as many men as there is females. And so with DISC, it's very similar. Nature has almost naturally divided people into either one of those 4. So that means that 25% of the general population will be found with a high D style in terms of communication. 25% will have a high I style. 25% around here and 25% around here. Now, what does it mean? If we continue to live by the mantra to treat people the way that you personally want to be treated, if your style is this one here, you are alienating and disenfranchising about 75% of the people that you come across. That means that you are only effective 25% of the time. 25% of the time, the people that you will be exposed to will see you as an equal because they've got the same style to you. But in these 75 other cases, they will actually disengage because you are not resonating on the same level. So it's really interesting to treat people instead the way that they want to be treated and figure out how to read people so that you can accommodate their style rather than have them adopt your style, which is not necessarily theirs. So this is the first one, misconception to throw overboard and become a more effective reader of people and then accommodate their style exactly so that they feel more comfortable in your presence. That in itself will help you to fast track your communication effectiveness. The second misconception is about the numbers game. People sometimes, again get taught, it's all a numbers game. In sales, for example, you just need to see enough people, make enough proposals, make enough presentations, and you will eventually get there. Or you make enough phone calls and you will close enough. But let's say not just in sales, the numbers game is sometimes what we see as well, when we recruit staff. We just need to recruit that many to, have a smaller portion that are really good at it. So it's again the idea of it's a numbers game. I would like for you to consider the following, right? If you, let's say, get exposed to 10 odd people, right? And you're again want to think that it's a numbers game, you may think that, out of experience, that there's only, 2 out of 10 that it will work, right? 2 out of 10. Let's say this one here and this one here. What we haven't really thought about here in saying it's a numbers game is that the approach we take can either engage people or disengage people. Similar to what we said about DISC. So the more effective you become as a communicator, the more impactful your approach is with a variety of people, and where you apply different strokes to different folks, the more you consistently do it, the less the number is really an issue, but it's more about the quality. So less quantity, more quality. Because here's the point. Once you start finding more ways to engage more people along the way, you still talk to 10 people, but suddenly instead of having 2 of them that you sync in well, or that you sync with, that you communicate well with, suddenly you got 4. So not more exposures, it's just a better approach with each one. Then you figure out that there's another type of person that you normally would have had some issues and challenges with dealing with, but then you find also a way to get those people on board, and suddenly you are working yourself towards more effectiveness with the people that you get in contact with, and you start to leverage your own effectiveness and capability with the same amount of people. Now, I've seen how this, for example, fast-tracked the results I gotten in business, not necessarily by working harder and making more phone calls and seeing more people and doing more proposals. It was more about the quality of the time invested. And this is obviously what you can do too. So becoming more effective with the time at hand and working smarter and more strategically. So this is number 2. Rather than it's a numbers game, yeah, well, the numbers do stack up, but it's definitely also a thing of quality. We sometimes think that certain people are gifted. You know, that works for them because that person is gifted. That person is really good at it, you know, like it's just a natural at it. These type of things, I'd like for you again to consider that how easily are you talking yourself out of being effective just by thinking and talking that way. The self-talk or even the overt talk that we engage in clearly shows that we sometimes disengage ourselves and we also almost shut the door to our own success. Rather than thinking that way, I'd like you to consider that most people that are born into this world are clearly not great communicators from childhood on. So it's something that we all have gotten to learn over time as we started to say the first few words, then started to construct two-word sentences, over to longer sentences, then improving the grammar and the vocabulary, expanding all of that. As we grew into that, guess what? Certain people started to see that communication is important to them, and they invested the time to refine their craft in that field. Whilst others would have thought that, numbers is something more important. Let me tell you a quick example. The family that I was born into, there was this misconception, a misconstrued world that I initially bought into of there's certain kids that are great at maths and there's certain kids that are great at languages. And so, early on as a child, I find myself into the so-called hard choice, to say which one of them I would gravitate more towards. And so it was almost like I had to make a decision for either one. And so obviously I did, because I didn't know any better. Well, naturally, as I was closer to my mum, who obviously was very big on languages, I went with the languages. And I somehow, in the first few years of my life, almost muffled away the importance of maths, of numbers, and the like. And so I went on a separate journey. My 2 brothers, though, they were more like my dad. They went the way of the numbers. They went to study economics. I went to become a psychologist and looking after people and relating to them. They went more with the science of economy and numbers. Very different way. I did notice though during my years at university that I actually had started to take a liking in numbers, and I started to catch myself that the philosophy that for so long I had subscribed to, of this big divide between languages over here and numbers over there, and you can only be one of the two, I started to understand that that was just a misconstruction in my own mind. And so as I made different decisions, and as I saw myself be, let's say, at least having the innate ability to learn more about the numbers, so I started to really do well at them, and I even graduated with distinctions in, statistics and that sort of stuff. So it just goes to show when we put our mind to it, we can effectively be successful at anything that we really choose. But we need to put in the efforts. And so does it mean that everybody will, gradually become world-class, an Olympic athlete, or the best person at playing chess? That it's not necessarily what I'm implying. But what I am implying is that if you really are serious about anything, that you, with the proper attention and efforts invested into it, can get you from this level all the way till this level and possibly even higher. So it's not necessarily being gifted, it's about putting the effort into developing the right habits. So that's really number 3. Number 4 then, when you say, I'm not good at, for example, public speaking, which is obviously part of being a communicator, then once again, I would like you to challenge yourself on that, because you saying, I'm not good enough, it's your personal self-talk that is a self-fulfilling prophecy on the negative side, meaning it won't go anywhere, because if this is your limitation, the limitation that you impose on yourself, that's obviously as far as you can ever get, unless you get rid of the limitation and start believing more in yourself. I highly recommend you to believe in your own abilities, because this thing here, this beautiful device that we all have, that we all are gifted when we enter into this world, is something that is very flexible, and time research will back that up. Brain plasticity is one of those key terms. So the question is, how well do you use your brain? How well do you put it to work for you, so that you can solicit more out of your days, more out of your life, and effectively go there where you want to go and be. Number 5 then, last but not least, and I've got something more on the whiteboard here for you. Sometimes I catch people, especially in leadership roles or managerial roles, I sometimes see this big challenge that people face in terms of creating engagement, in terms of getting people on a change pathway, transforming the organization, changing culture, adopting new technology, and having people to own the technology and run with it. Typically what I hear a lot of people say is that they find a lot of resistance, a lot of setback, a lot of pushback, a lot of people being disenfranchised, opposing, and the likes. Well, here's the point. We really need to get back to the psychology of creating buy-in. And so I'd like to share, let's say, a quick example that you probably can easily relate to. The big divide between male and female, just as an analogy to draw the picture. When we say, sometimes we go into our business meetings and say, when I get my facts right, people will follow. So when I got the right reasons, people will follow. If I've got the right strategy, people will follow. If I got the right planning and put it into my business, people will follow. Meaning people being both staff as well as clients. People will follow. This is, let's say, a synopsis of people's thinking. Now, it may sound differently, but it all goes along. As long as I got the right facts, the right information, people will follow. The results will come. Now, as you and I know, most change that we try to initiate where we want to get the buy-in of other people is not that successful initially. So, in order to avoid that, let's look again at that analogy between man and female and where we sometimes see that there's friction. Classically speaking, here on the left-hand side, this is my little, graphic of a man who talks very much from his brain. So he's very much about matter of fact, about logic, about information, about facts, details, data, research, that sort of stuff, right? And so he's like having a conversation with a woman. And they're just having this communication going. The guy talks about his brain, with the logics, whilst the female starts more on a feeling level, and she talks some more about the heart. Now notice what happens here. He continues on the logical way, she continues on an emotional level, and they are not syncing. They are talking at different wavelengths. One talks here, the other person talks this level, and they are not syncing. Notice now how this is very similar when you're looking at an organization at large, where you are again trying to get people's buy-in. When we somehow are only touching on one of the levels, the issue or the challenge that we have when wanting to create the buy-in is that we need to engage two different levels, both the logical as well as the emotional level. However, there is a logical or an order to it in this stage. What we're looking at specifically here is that you first need to get the emotional buy-in, which is one of my previous videos. You first need to get, emotionally speaking, the trust and the rapport and the safe environment spelled out on the heart level. Emotionally speaking, people need to first feel comfortable. Once you get people to feel comfortable in terms of your approach, then you can come in with the logical justification. Combine emotions first along with logic, then you've got a powerhouse to create effective buy-in. Mental, emotionally, psychological buy-in. That's really what we're looking at. So going in with an idea that when I got my facts right, which is being the logical part first, expecting that people will come your way when you are the boss and you got a good plan and you start talking about the plan and you expect people to come along, guess what? Unless people feel emotionally safe within the relationship and perhaps the changes that you are asking them to embark on, unless you got that sorted, the logical stuff won't go anywhere. And that is probably the reason why some of the things that you're trying to do are not helping you to get ahead. Anyway, this is really my quick video on these 5. So rather than treat people the way that you personally want to be treated, treat them in the way that they want to be treated is number 1. Number 2 is then, it's a numbers game. Well, to some extent, yes, but it's also a matter of quality. You can really become more versatile, more flexible, and more rounded as an individual or a communicator, and therefore be more effective with the same number of people. So it's a matter of quality too. Number 3, instead of saying some people are gifted, they are born, with the ability, say it rather, you know what? They have done the hard yards for it, and if this is important to me, I can do it too, which brings us now to number 4. If you think that you're not good at something, look around. There's plenty of people that weren't good at something initially that they found important enough to put in the effort so that they went along and did exactly that, so that they really got great at it. And so can you. Number 5 then, instead of saying, when I get my facts right, people will follow, make sure that first you get the emotions right, then come with the facts, and then you'll become more successful. So I hope this video was helpful. Please, your feedback is important, so leave some comments below. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you next time. My name is Bram. Bye-bye.